It's April 15th, 2024. This is the GBOS regular meeting. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors, its committees and subcommittees are subject to the Alaska Open Meetings Act as found in Alaska Statute 44.62.310 and Anchorage Municipal Code 1.25 public meetings. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors operates under the Girdwood Public Meeting Standards of Conduct. I'll call this meeting to order at 7:01. I'm Brianna Sullivan, co-chair and Fire Department Supervisor. I'll do roll call after the land acknowledgement. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors acknowledges the indigenous peoples of Alaska whose land we reside on. The community of Girdwood, situated between the areas known to be Dena'ina and Aluktik homeland, respects the people who were stewards of this land for generations. We commit to the continued stewardship of this land and are grateful to be part of the wider community that seeks to maintain a sustainable use of Girdwood Valley for present and future periods. We'll do roll call now in the room.
Jennifer Wingard, co-chair and OUC supervisor.
Kyle Wayne, Cemetery Parks and Rec.
And online,
Amanda Sassy, public safety and roads utility supervisor.
Thank you. And Mike Edgington is not in the room or online yet, but we'll acknowledge when he is. Any disclosures this evening?
Yes, I have one, just that I might have to leave early, so I apologize in advance.
Okay, thank you. Amanda.
I don't know the agenda item number, but the Imagine Girdwood item, I am on the board as the treasurer of Imagine Girdwood.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. If we need to do any questions when we get to that point, we could, but right now that is not a decision-making item, so I would not excuse you from that topic right now is my ruling. And anyone is welcome to object. Okay, go to agenda revisions and approval. I'd entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Yes. I'd like to talk about old business number 9. I know that we have put this off a lot, the Public Safety Advisory Committee, but I spoke with Tommy O'Malley. He is out of state and he really felt strongly that he wanted to be here for this conversation. And also he had some ideas about possibly changing that structure. And so I feel like if we could mutually agree to not talk about it, then he would really appreciate it.
I agree. Tommy's a big supporter of that. It's put a lot of time in it, but sure it'd be nice if he could have some. Be nice to listen to him speak to it.
Go ahead, Margaret.
I think that there are still some aspects of this that would be helpful to discuss. I'm not sure if you're suggesting that we postpone the discussion entirely, but what would be helpful would be to maybe agree for PSAC to release the space on the first Monday of each month so that we can handle another item that's related to just the timing. So I don't have any interest in waiting until Tommy is here, but just like it would be helpful to get some resolution for our other committee.
May I speak to that point really quickly? I did talk to Tommy about that and he thought it would be fine. I mentioned an issue and he saw no issue whatsoever with possibly changing to quarterly, but also to the last Monday of the month or some other Monday that works with the calendar, whatever. But he is not, he didn't feel committed to meeting that particular Monday. Find something else working with you.
And can I guess the committee, another point to the 2 members, you know, if they're waiting to be appointed tonight. Did we have input on that, or I think we should just go ahead?
Margaret has.
So I think for purposes of setting the agenda, we should leave the item as and then address it during the meeting.
Yeah, this is.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Just have to say it's good discussion, but no amendment. So we'll move on then with any objections to the agenda. Go by assent.
Oh, wait, sorry.
Oh,
One other thing. I'd like to know if under new business, I could add an item, which is just a quick discussion about something we've already talked before. It's not exactly new business, but it is more specific parliamentary training.
So motion to add an item to new
Yes.
business from Jennifer. Do we have a second?
Also, can-
Okay, thank you, guys. Is there any objection?
what is it?
The parliamentary procedure stuff, we've already talked about it so many times, but this is a different training, different from the 4-acre.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay, we'll go by assent on that. So we have item number 20. And that will be added. Okay. Next is March 25th meeting minutes approval.
I will move to approve.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Any objections? Objections. Okay, going by assent, March 25th meeting minutes are approved. I think the April 10th special meeting minutes aren't ready yet. So is it okay to move those to the next meeting?
They are out
They're out.
and they were emailed earlier and
Okay, I didn't have
available.
a chance to read them yet, but if other members have and approve them, they can so move.
Or you can,
We could hold off if you wanted to review them. Yep, just got them out today.
If anyone is objecting to moving that item to May's meeting or next week for their meeting, they will be. Okay, thank you. Announcements. The public is encouraged to ask questions and provide comment. Please raise your hand and wait to be acknowledged. To help discussions stay productive, please direct your comments to the board rather than other members of the public and keep your comments focused on the business under discussion. Please be respectful of everyone's opinions. The MOA GBOS quarterly meeting is April 29th at 4 p.m. The GBOS LUC joint meeting regarding the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan is also April 29th and at 7 p.m. The GBOS GHEC joint meeting regarding GBSA housing goals and STRs is May 13th at 4 p.m. We'll go into introductions, presentations, and reports. Number 1 on our agenda tonight is the NSTAR presentation, and Sterling Lopez wrote just last week saying that they are not able to come tonight and said that their permit is pending and they will contact us when they're ready to come with information. So we don't have any other update than that for number 1. So we'll go to number 2 with legislative report. I saw Senator Giesel online. Welcome, and you have the floor if you're ready.
Thank you, Amanda. Sorry, I'm eating dinner, so I'm swallowing for one moment here. Yeah, thanks. Probably the most exciting piece of information I have to share. Crystal may have already shared with you, and that is in the capital budget, I was able to secure $500,000 for the Girdwood Workforce Child Care Project. Little Bears, right? So that was pretty exciting. And also in the budget related to Girdwood is, let me take a look here, about $180,000 for the Alaska Long Trail, the Girdwood Middle Iditarod National Historic Trail improvements. So that is also in the capital budget. So probably the next question you're asking in your mind is, wait a minute, does that mean it's really going to happen or what? So the capital budget is crafted by the Senate first. While we're working on the capital budget, the House is working on the operating budget. Then we trade. We traded budgets last Friday. There is an agreement between the House and Senate that we will not mess with each other's capital budget appropriations. This year, for the first time in, I just don't even remember the last time, we actually, each senator got an allotment of money to appropriate for our district's projects. That's how the Girdwood Child Care Project got in the budget. It was actually my first choice of a budget item to put in. So that was pretty exciting. But what happens is now the capital budget, excuse me, is with the House. This piece will stay in the budget. It'll come back. We will not conference the capital budget. So what that means is the House will have a separate items in their capital budget. Of course, we have separate items. When that happens, the legislative, the two bodies will have a group that sit down together and decide which items to leave in, which ones to take out. We've agreed this year, we're not going to conference the capital budget. The House has an amount of money, the Senate had an amount of money in the capital budget, and we're just going to submit it as it comes out of our bodies to the governor. The governor can still redline individual projects. So we won't actually know that the Little Bears funding made it through until after the governor doesn't redline it. So keep hoping for that. So the operating budget is over now in the Senate. The operating budget that the House put out has about almost $1 billion in unfunded liability, unfunded stuff. So the Senate has been working on our version of the operating budget, which is fully funded. It's mainly constrained because we do still maintain a 25-75 split for the dividend. So what that means is the money that comes out of the earnings reserve account, we divide it. 25% of it goes to dividends, 75% of it goes to funding schools, roads, public safety, etc. We've talked about that before. One of the unknown pieces that came to us, or I guess I would call it surprise pieces, is the maintenance of equity requirements that the federal government put on us for education. This is a requirement that we didn't meet according to the federal government. There is a potential of a $29 million fine. So right now, the Senate Education Committee is staying in close contact with the Department of Education to figure out how we're going to correct that oversight. What it would mean if we did correct it is the Anchorage School District is actually owed about $6 million in short funding in maintenance of equity provisions that the federal government believes we have not met. So that is a budget item that is not in the budget yet, that we may be challenged to meet. But the positive thing is the capital budget has the child care center in Girdwood in it for $500,000. So that's pretty exciting. I'll stop there. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Senator Giesel. And for the record, Mike Edgington joined at 7:09. Are there any questions from the board? Senator Giesel?
Just a comment. Thank you for the work on the capital budget. And I guess I do have a question. You may have mentioned it, but I missed it in passing. What was the education funding BSA resolution?
The BSA resolution has not yet happened. As you remember, the governor vetoed the bill that we had. We had education funding in the broadband bill. The governor vetoed that whole bill. What we ended up doing was breaking out the broadband funding, $69 million matched with federal money. That bill passed, but we still don't have base student allocation in either budget. Pardon me. I don't know what the House put in theirs. The Senate provides a $680 per student increase in the BSA. We have that already in our operating budget, which is balanced. And as I said, has that 25% dividend in it, which is what helps us balance the budget and provide that education funding.
Okay. And was 680, is that the same number as was proposed last year, or is that slightly higher?
Excuse me. Yes, that is the same number as last year. Mike.
Thank you.
You remember the governor cut that number in half last year in the budget. So this year we're hoping it goes through. I'll tell you, the school districts right now are saying actually to meet the erosion of inflation, it would have to be $1,413 for every student. Clearly, we aren't matching that number.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Senator Giesel? Online? Thank you so much for joining us tonight and your update and all of your work. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Next would be assembly members. Are there any online, Kyle?
Does not look like it at this time. I'll look for them, see if they come in.
Thank you. Right. Then the HLBAC Girdwood representative report is in the packet from Tim Sharnon. And I believe it also highlights that March meeting was canceled and the next one is Thursday, April 25th. Right there online on the screen or in the packet. Number 3 is supervisor upcoming items. How about we start on the left? Guy, do you have anything to report?
I do.
Okay, I'll go next. I just wanted to, this is Brianna. I would like to say that at the last meeting with Chugach Electric doing their presentation regarding the transmission line, I was remiss not to ask a question about the bald eagle nests along the 12-mile stretch. And Mike, I forget his last name, wrote me back to answer the questions about the Chugach Electric Association and contractor Northern Power Constructors are keenly aware of the bald eagle nest at mile markers 92.5, 98, and mile post 103. And in 2020, 22, and 23, Chugach Electric completed aerial surveys of the project area and focusing on the bald eagle nest and bear dens. And they did a document. They documented the eagle nests identified and other nests in the general project area. And they're taking steps to avoid disturbing the nesting bald eagles during construction of the new transmission line. And the current work with the new foundations are located a sufficient distance from the nests at mile post 92.5 and 98 to prevent disturbing eagle nesting and fledging activities. And also the Girdwood Board of Fire meeting is postponed, so soon it will happen. Hopefully, that's all I have to report. Mike.
Yeah, okay. A few things going on. One is actually passed, but the again presentation of the Budget Advisory Commission last week about room tax and the amount raised for short-term rentals, and that ties to a future action. The Budget Advisory Commission was interested in pursuing this further, so I have a couple of meetings in the next week or two, and they're likely to take sort of supportive action on the issue of short-term rental room tax being used to mitigate the impact on housing. That will come up in their next meeting in May, and then hopefully beyond that. More broadly, I've been looking at other issues in the budget. We had a problem a couple of years ago when we accidentally nearly ended up with a massive tax increase for no good reason. So when the budget documents come out, first quarter budget documents and the proposed mill rates, there's a bunch of work around that to sort of understand what it means for us. What it looks at the moment is there'll be a slight decrease in mill rates, but probably not enough to offset the general increase in values of housing in Girdwood. There is one interesting item as well that also ties to room tax. There's one room tax item in the budget that's likely to get changed as well in the next couple of weeks and may release a bunch of money. And I think the other main thing is there's likely to be some other items coming up in the very near future about other developments in Girdwood, but we can cover that later.
You, Jennifer?
No.
And Amanda, do you have a report?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is the status of, committee updates to GBOS. If anything outside of minutes needs to be updated, the agenda, but items of interest. Anyone online or in the room with committee? Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, Matt Schechter. I'll just quickly discuss from the last Girdwood Housing and Economic Committee meeting. A lot of discussion initially centered around what actually is Old Business Agenda 13 in terms of the dwelling mixed units in GC2. We also discussed, and this will be handled in Old Business, I think number 10 tonight, is kind of the housing goals in our joint meeting, and I think discussing issues around short-term rental regulation, and the fact that the Assembly didn't approve anything, and now we're kind of on our way. The last thing I would note is that in the next meeting, which I think is early May, We're going to be talking about, so I think the assembly is going to vote on the HLB, the 5-year plan on the 23rd, of which there are parcels that hopefully will be assigned to Girdwood Valley Service Organization or Association. I kind of refer to as the dog catching the car. If we're so fortunate to catch it. One of the parcels to be discussed in the next meeting will be 6039, which is the parcel on Alyeska Highway, just north of Ruane, and Crystal is assembling information on that. That's it.
Thank you. Any other committee updates? All right. I will go to status of proposed Girdwood developments, number 5 on the agenda, and it's in the packet. And
Yes.
give me an update or.
There's a few updates I just want to point out here. I'll start from the top. Bolton Hills, I think we got some poor information last time saying a consultant had been selected. Apparently there was some hiccup in the process of the RFP, so the consultant selection is still in progress. The Alyeska Village proposal from the resort is apparently being sent to planning, and the application has begun, or it's been submitted. I haven't seen a public version of it yet. We expect to see that in the next few days. The Glacier City Centre did have a public hearing about their changes to development master plan last week, which was approved. There's a new item, 39 South Townhouses, that's been in front of LUC before. Don't remember if it's GBOS or not. Joe Bell is the local partner of that group. It's adding a triplex to their current development of 4 townhouses on Alyeska Highway. Presentation that we had last meeting about the property on Northland has been postponed. The hearing's been postponed till later on this year. N-Star, I think you heard the update earlier. And the other thing, last but not least, is the Hotel Lodge proposal. The state DOT has approved a land lease, just a land lease. No, there's no permit for building construction or any site preparation yet. But they did approve a land lease of that area. There is a 30-day window for objections, which I believe started on April the 11th. So if we wish to protest, we have a limited period of time to do so.
And on that item that you just updated, Mike, we had some community questions about it, and the airport manager was invited to this meeting in case they could come, and they were not able to come this evening, but said it would be okay to submit questions in writing. So if anyone has ideas about that, now might be a good time to discuss it. This item is about status of proposed development.
I have a question on there too.
That same one or different?
Well, the same item.
Yeah.
So it said that, I remember discussion about the DOT, holds the position that development is all state land, not subject to. I know we've said internally that we believe that, but has the municipality jumped on board on that and voiced is that clear cut right now? Have they made
At the last joint meeting we had with, not the last one, at one of the joint meetings we had with the MOA, the planning director stated in the meeting that they have received a legal opinion that the state is not, it's still subject to requirements. So there is clearly 2 different opinions, from one from the state and one from the municipality. But until something, at the moment, they have a lease for, the developers have a lease for the land, but they don't have permission to do anything on the land. So until they actually start doing something, they don't need a land use permit until they start doing something. So it only becomes a critical issue, if you like. The municipality only really has standing once something starts happening, if they haven't applied for a permit.
the state didn't say, oh, we agree with you on that?
I don't think the state can.
Real quick.
Kyle.
I think part of that lease agreement is that they have to conduct a traffic study and they have to actually do a NEPA. So there's 2 steps that they have to complete before they can move forward. And then planning department will not have an opinion on anything until application is actually submitted and reviewed.
unless an application is not submitted, an activity starts which should need an application, and then they do have an opinion.
Yeah, but in most cases, when you ask them if there's no progress or application been submitted, they won't have opinion.
Okay, does anyone feel that we need to submit questions about it? No? Wait,
One thing I would say is for those that have received the letter or seen the letter from DOT, it says that all the public, there were a lot of public comments, and it led to a lot of discussion and proposed changes, but none of those proposed changes have been made public. And when I checked with the leasing manager, they informed us that they would not be made public, but they would respond to FOIA requests after the protest period is over.
thank you. Okay, anything else on the, okay, we'll continue. Is there any more for the chart here
They were
after that?
the major changes.
Okay. If there's nothing else on this item, I'll go to number 6. Okay, service provider reports, 5 minutes each, and Chief Weston is up first.
Hello.
Welcome.
For our stats so far in April, we've had 5 EMS calls, 3 motor vehicle accidents, 1 service call, which is basically somebody vulnerable, truck locked in a car, 2 commercial alarms and 1 gas odor call. The commercial alarms were coming in from US Forest Service and Portage, which was kind of interesting. Accidental trips. In March, we had 19 EMS calls, 1 driver fire, 1 large vehicle fire, 3 MVAs, 2 commercial fire alarms, 1 gas odor, and 1 CO alarm. So those are stats so far. So we're kind of on track for where we, we're really heavy in February, and then we sort of slowed down to our normal sort of amount of call volume in March, and right now pretty standard. So other than that, just we've got training going on for firefighter 1. So the crews are in town doing that on the weekend. We saw obviously coverage here. I wanted to mention that I went to the tsunami meeting workshop in Seward 2 weeks ago, and it was very worthwhile going. What I learned was they gave presentations actually on work research that's been done in Girdwood and in Portage, scientific research beyond the tsunami presentations that we were given last fall. So the one that stuck out for me was they showed, and maybe I just missed this in the other presentations, was that, we've always talked about, in 64, there was subsidence, but they can prove that when there was subsidence before there was subsidence, like 700 years before that. So it was actually the second subsidence was 64. So I thought that was interesting. That's never really sort of clued into my head before. And then also at the end of that, we found out that the federal program, NOAA, that does the tsunami hazard program, the mitigation program, one that did all the tsunami inundation maps and the research in that, it's proposed to be sunsetted and phased out in 2025 from the NOAA program. So no tsunami hazard program. And so there's a large letter writing campaign put forth also by the state of Alaska to continue this program. So if anybody wants to write a letter, I have some talking points that was given to me by NOAA, and I'll definitely be putting in a letter. It seems surprising to me that they would end up not having a tsunami program in the US. But anyway, and then what also was good at that meeting was the Weather Service, National Weather Service was there, and they have a whole bunch of new sort of interactive weather platforms that we can all subscribe to and also give feedback in, like real time, like a Slack chat, and they'll respond back. And so at some point in time, I'd like to share those with everybody, get them to come in and do that. So that was sort of exciting, was the interactiveness. We have the ability right now, if we have to do anything, to reach out to the forecaster because we know them, and they'll give us a spot forecast for any event that's going on right away, which is an amazing service. But now there's also some other good sort of interactive thing that I think we can actually provide some really good, like citizen-based weather observations into the weather models. So I'm kind of excited about that, which is not really fire EMS, but it's just kind of interesting. Sightsee, kind of nerdy. Any questions for me?
Guy?
That, I did see on the news, yeah, that Jim was gonna cut that program.
Yeah.
How much of that is Alaska's program, or does the state, you know?
The state was having an emergency meeting. It kind of blindsided the state, and so they're also having meetings on it as well to try and get it back. So it is based, the part of it is based in Palmer. I don't know complete details on it, but I do have a talking point that I can show you. So,
State funding doesn't.
no, so I was
There
playing.
state funding.
Well, during, with this, there is a tsunami coordinator at the state of Alaska, but all of that earthquake mapping and research and that's coming from the feds. So, and then I was also sort of pressing the municipal emergency operations center about where's our signage, right? There's also some things that have to happen before we get signage, and then there's some issues on funding signage, so we're a little ways out. But the other take-home message from that meeting was basically, if there's an earthquake, problem, you know, and if we have a tsunami risk, people should evacuate. We're not going to have time to actually go and notify people to evacuate. So, and then we needed to also recognize that Whittier and Whittier police are going to be doing their own thing, doing their tsunami issue. So it's probably going to be just a remember to self-evacuate notification part for Girdwood. So, but more to come on that. Thank you.
Any other questions, Mike?
Couple of quick questions. You mentioned earlier about the alarm at Portage. Is that something you have to respond to? Because that would be out of area.
It is an out of area fire alarm. So technically, normally we would be able to build that as an out of area fire response. I'm not sure how, if we can build them, but we should, right? We should get the municipality to build them for that because it is an out of area fire.
The feds are saving all the money by cancelling, getting rid of the tsunami.
Right,
Program.
right. You know, if we respond to a fire on federal property, we can go down a reimbursement for that. So hopefully an alarm sounding, tripping, so it should also.
My second question related to the tsunami hazard. In looking around at what information we have about different types of hazard, and I noticed there doesn't appear to be any seismic hazard information about Girdwood at all. There is for other parts of the Muni, but not for Girdwood. Is that your understanding as well, or is it hidden somewhere? Or?
I was surprised. I'm trying to pick my words carefully here. I was surprised when I looked at the municipal all hazards risk analysis that there were a few things that were seemed to be downplayed at the Girdwood Valley. Those included earthquake, big wind, avalanche. You know, so sort of things like that. And then there's that ongoing debate about wildfire. So, you know, I would say that it, just like with anything, squeaky wheel, we have to really promote our own hazards to get attention to it.
That's a good segue into something. It won't do at this meeting, but a future meeting, I think.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about the squeaky wheels.
Yeah, and it all boils down to, it's really, I think, important for us all as residents to be prepared, self-prepared for events more than it would be if we were, right? So we don't just need to have self-preparedness because we're going to be dealing with it ourselves, so.
Anything else for Chief Weston? Okay, I don't see any. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kate.
Chief O'Shea is next.
Good evening. For stats for the Girdwood service area for March of this year, Whittier Police had 236 calls for service. It was an increase from last month, but the primary reason for the increase is more area and business security checks in that area. Last month or February went from 113 to March went to 164, and that's just more businesses open. People are requesting checks as well as officers are going through doing business checks and security checks for that area. Other than that, the other calls maintained pretty much similar to the previous month. So total for Girdwood service area for March is 236 calls for service. Along with that, other stuff that's come up, I also would attend the same STOW meeting, which is the one that Chief Weston attended. It's very informational, very knowledgeable, and as she mentioned, there's a write-in campaign for congressional legislation to help fund the tsunami inundation map program. That's it's a federally funded program out of University of Alaska Fairbanks. So Whittier will also be participating in that by doing letters of support for those for to hopefully get that program refunded. Other than that, we're preparing for the summer activities in Girdwood. A couple other items of interest we did have, I believe I put on last month's management report. One officer, Officer Ruben Garcia, left Alaska and continues to seek his employment in law enforcement in the state of Texas. Since then, we have interviewed some prospective candidates, and we've extended one conditional offer for employment to one of the prospective candidates to replace Ruben. We're anticipating, hopefully, to complete our background hiring packet and everything else for him by within the next 3 to 4 weeks to have him on board before the majority of our summer season in Girdwood as well as in Whittier starts. Other than that, I also attended last week in Anchorage at an emergency management conference. A lot of good information from the federal and state levels on various items of topics and discussions dealing with emergency management, not only tsunami and floods, but other programs available throughout the state. Other than that, it's business as usual. Everything's melting, and hopefully the snow will hopefully stop for the rest of the season. Other than that, if anyone has questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Chief O'Shea. Any questions from the board or in the room? Okay, great news also about the new officer potential, and thank you for being here and all of your work. Next is Roads, Parks and Rec. Kyle Kelly.
Yep, we are slowly getting ready for spring to arrive. In Parks and Rec, we've got our two park caretakers back up for the summer, Luke and John, and they will hopefully start with us right here at the beginning of May and get things going along those lines. We want to give a big thanks for trails. One, to our dedicated volunteers who do the grooming out there. They've been at it all year, and it's been challenging conditions as of late, but they've been a great job of keeping up with it. And they're actually out there right now trying to get a groom in before it freezes up. And then also a huge thanks to Paul Cruz. He led an effort of helping us to replace a bridge on Beaver Pond and then get in a bridge package to the middle of Iditarod. Him and I worked on that last week, and we got all those materials out there. So we're looking actually really good, using the snow to our advantage to haul in quite a bit of lumber. And we have one more that we're going to try to do up off the Crow Creek Road. We're just waiting for the road to have better conditions to take material up there, and then we're going to winch that into that location. So, but Paul's been great. He's been leading the effort on it through design and coming up with the material list that we need. We had a huge announcement last week. We received notification from Rasmussen that we received a grant for $250,000 for the Winter Creek suspension bridge, and that will be going towards construction. So that's been a process that's been ongoing for several years, but we finally got the grant from them, and we're very appreciative of their support for this project. And a huge thanks to Chris von Inhoff, who really advocated on our behalf to make that happen there. So we're moving forward on that. We continue to find funding and many different partners. It's going to be from state to federal to local and to private foundation now, and then as well private donors. So we appreciate everybody's support, and we're moving forward on the final phase of construction, or excuse me, design, and get ourselves to a construction package that we can put out for bid hopefully this coming summer, fall. As always, in our packet, which I'll display up here, sorry, we have lots more detail, so I'll try to breeze through this so we're not in it too long. Margaret does a great job of keeping our social media and our website up to date, so you can find a lot of materials there. And there's also links within the packet that lead you to Senator Giesel's report, ASD's report, Heritage Land Bank. So if you're trying to find where to get to that. Road conditions, the breakup continues, but we are slowly getting roads to heal as they dry out and let the ice pack go. The crews have been on it daily, trying to control water and then get those potholes in our control. So we appreciate everybody's patience as we work with Mother Nature to get the roads back in shape for spring and summer. And we'll continue with that. And then as we go in the months or the coming weeks here, we'll start cleanup with sweeping of streets, removing the winter sand and rock, and getting everything taken care of out there, and then move into summer operations. So it's slowly moving along. This looks like actually one of the most positive weeks after last week when we had a foot of snow up in the higher elevations. So we're hopefully done with all that. We are still moving forward with the Ruane Fish Culvert project, with the Davos Fish Culvert project. That right now is just finishing up, and we'll hopefully get that over the purchasing to put on the street here in the coming weeks, and hopefully get that project off and running in the summer. And then the Ruane project, we have submitted our initial application to the EPA, and then that will start probably a 3-step process with them to get to the funding that's available for that project. So that would be a 1.6 million coming from the federal government through the EPA, and then the service area will provide the 20% required match on that project. So we're working through those steps now, get that done. Budgets and expenses are all good for all the departments, right where we need to be for this time of year. And we will keep tabs. We have started moving money from operating to the budget contributions. So all 3 departments that do that, those monies have been moved or are in the process of being moved. So those capital budgets should get their contributions here if they haven't already. So, and then, yeah, so that's just kind of a quick overall. Open the questions anybody has.
Kyle, I had one, I don't know if it sounds, it's right after expenses and budget. Should it say August for the undesignated fund balance? Right up there, August 16. Probably all the right.
Sorry,
Here. Yes, because that's the last time it was audited.
that's the last time we audited.
Okay, that
Yep.
makes sense.
So we won't, so the undesignated fund is not, we don't get an audited accounting until midsummer.
Okay, which makes sense for all of our budgets.
Yes.
August, okay.
Yep.
July. Any questions from the board?
I have one, for your this passage, Western, they can bid on that, right? They're not excluded from that.
Yeah, they are. They're gonna bid. They're interested in bidding. Yep.
Any other question? Any, thank you very much. Okay, we'll go to, yes.
Actually, could I just ask, there was one thing I meant to say in supervisors upcoming items, and then when I forgot, I thought maybe Chief Weston would mention it and didn't. Can I just?
Go ahead, yes. I
Yeah,
think
there's an item we actually moved a few months ago on proposing a property tax exemption, thank you, for volunteer firefighters and EMS personnel. And it's made its way through the assembly, and it's going to appear at public hearing next Tuesday. So I think the fire department is very interested in that. And I think we are as well. And I was wondering maybe later we could have either an item or just a confirmation that somebody can represent GBOS at that meeting next week.
Okay, thank you for adding that. I was thinking that in my head. Anything else on that item? Okay. We'll go to public comment. Persons offering public comment must state their full name and address. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person and must be on subjects not on the agenda. Anyone here for public comment, please come forward.
Usually it's colder in here. I think I got all wrapped up today. So anyway, good evening, everyone. My name is Linda Mankoff. I'm with the Girdwood Health Clinic, and I'm just here to share a little bit of some of the events that we have coming up at the clinic. We've just launched a series of presentations and talks regarding resources for our senior population. The fastest growing population in the state of Alaska is our senior population. And so, of course, we here in Girdwood have a very vibrant senior population. We're not trying to become a senior center per se, but we wanted to have some regular talks and presentations on resources that affect seniors' lives, whether it's economics or healthcare. As we know, most seniors are on fixed incomes, but the inflation is not fixed. And so it does affect people, and it also does add to the issue of housing as well. I have had seniors tell me that people will approach them asking them, when are you leaving? When are you going to move? So I can buy your house. You know, it's kind of like New York, reading the obits. But anyway, so I just wanted to share that. That's a topic that we're trying to help out. And we also have the mammography van that's coming. We try to bring that regularly for everyone who has transportation issues or just simply won't do it unless it's more convenient. So that's happening on the 24th. And we launched our series of senior talks. That was on the 20th of March. Our next one's going to be the 3rd week of May. I don't have confirmation on the presenter just yet. Hopefully, I'll be able to give you a date on that soon. Also, I just wanted to say Haynes has a population of 1,800 or less, and they have a senior center. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments tonight?
Brooks Chandler, Stowe Circle. I began by saying I wish I didn't feel like I had to say this, but and apologize in advance for anyone that's offended, but I really do think someone needs to say something. And what I have to say is that I am growing increasingly disappointed with the dynamic between the Board of Supervisors and the Housing and Economic Committee. I feel like things have deteriorated to a level that's not very productive for the community. And people are getting wrapped around the axle on relatively minor details when there's some really big picture issues that need to be grappled with and solved. Anytime this board puts out a request for people from the community to volunteer to be on a committee, spend a lot of hours working on a very specific problem, mainly because the board has too many other things to address on behalf of the community. So the idea of the committee is you get a smaller group to focus on very specific problems. And when those people who have been asked to volunteer do so, put a lot of time and effort into it, I think they deserve to have a certain level of respect from their product for this board, not necessarily whether there's 100% agreement on things. A lot of these issues that have to do with housing are extremely difficult. And there's going to be significant disagreement on what potential solutions are, but everyone should be thinking that the folks involved, whether they're on this board or on that committee, are earnestly and honestly trying to achieve solutions for the community. And I think the tone of the meetings and the tone of the discourse is out of line with what should be, a broader community goal. And so I would urge both the members of this board and the members of the Housing and Economic Committee to try to sort of keep their focus, step back a little bit from personal ego issues and or conflicts that aren't genuinely related to policy, and try to improve the level of discourse as we move forward and try to solve these problems.
Thank you. Any other public comment this evening? Online? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to number 7 in old business. Review GBOS and LUC discussion / votes on temporary workforce housing on commercial land proposal and procedure to resolve. Okay. So this was at land use last week, right? It's already been a week. Yes, land use. And who would like to speak to this? Or do you mind starting off?
Sure. I'm not
I can
sure.
handle it.
Okay, Kyle.
Basically, and you guys might have to, land use requested, sent a request back, and Sorry, I wasn't prepared for this. Let me pull up, I think it's best that we pull up the minutes from land use so that we can discuss. But basically, the recommendation that land use had sent up originally related to this item was not fully taken by the board. And so the item was sent back with a resolution and a motion from land use asking them to, I'll get to it here, sorry.
Thank you, that's great.
Okay, so this is the minutes from last land use, and you stroll down here. So what happened is that what GBOS approved at your last meeting was not in agreement with what land use had sent forward as their recommendation. And since what GBOS approved did not align with what LUC recommended, and there's no time restriction, GBOS under your operating procedures should have sent a letter explaining why and asked them to reconsider the change. That didn't happen, and so land use sent back a motion, which was passed by the body, requesting a letter from GBOS to explain the changes made by GBOS. Their motion is tabled when clarified, the process already requires this. So basically, the item on this item's back on the GBOS agenda, and to I think the action in front of you to consider is writing a letter explaining the difference between what LUC recommended and what GBOS actually passed and the reasoning behind it. So that's where we stand at this point. And so I think, and you guys know as well as I do, or better than I do, I should say, the major differences was that the bonding wasn't required for people who were going to set up temporary workforce housing if they went through it. And then also GBOS opted to add on-site sanitation facilities, which wasn't in the original recommendation that came from LUC. So I think those two things are being requested to be explained back to LUC for their reconsideration. That's where it stands.
Thank you, Kyle. Thanks for the refresher for many who did or didn't hear the land use meeting. Mike, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so I think this has definitely brought up some structural problems we have within the way our operating procedures are based on what the board was doing a decade or two ago and don't reflect accurately what's the situation is now. So we know they need to be updated. So we're going to go through that process in the near future. I think to me, there's a set of bigger questions, which I don't see any point in addressing tonight. I think there's a couple of simple ways we can do this. We can either write a letter explaining what we did, or we could potentially reconsider the vote and just move forward with what LUC suggested for now, since this is just a step in the process. This doesn't make any final determination on what actually comes back to us. So I actually think that's the simplest part. So that's the motion I will make. I'll make a motion that we actually revert the changes that we made at the last meeting. The body agrees, and just move forward with that.
Thank you. That was a motion. So before we have discussion, we need a second.
Second.
Thank you, Guy. And discussion, who would like to refer?
Actually, I'll just touch one more thing. I'm actually going to refer back to something that Brooke said. I think this isn't a major policy difference. This is a relatively minor thing, and we're just going to waste a lot of time. And ultimately, we have a problem of a lot of unhoused and poorly housed people in this community. And I think we need to focus on solving that big problem, bigger picture, not just fighting over how much control LUC has over what GBOS does. So I would say just revert back, move it forwards, and then we'll actually see a more substantial and complete proposal in the future.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the two very clear ideas, and I would be happy with the one that wastes the least amount of everyone's time and gets too busy with process or not keeping us focused. And because it is a draft. essentially. So I am happy to do the motion that is on the table right now.
Yeah, during our last meeting, I voted against removing the financial assurance. So, I'd be glad to see that put back on the table. I think that's a worthy item and kind of a big change from what was sent forward. I wish I knew better, where the, maybe we should have, I don't know the process of tabled it there. Send it back for another, send it back for another go round and see how that goes or whatever. But I'm glad to see that put back on there because it did seem like a big change from what land use was recommending. And but then, on the other side, I guess this isn't final yet. So, there's still, this will probably evolve a little more before we make the final. So.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Any in the room? Okay, come a little bit closer for people online.
Well, I'll say it sort of loud. So I was the one that suggested the on-site sanitation facility issue. I think dry cabins are great, but I think that for considering half of the valley is on wells, we need to provide that in that. And so that's just the genesis of that. And maybe that was already in the housing plan somehow addressed, but that was the reasoning was if we're on wells, we should have a way to do sanitation.
Thank you. Matt?
Okay.
Come on.
The sanitation is a big issue, but also. If the community wants this, which I'm still doubtful, what are the rules behind these dry cabins having functioning power? You have to deal with it, so that's a problem.
Yeah, and having lived in Fairbanks in a dry cabin for years in grad school, I appreciate that. And there's dry cabins in my neighborhood, right?
Right.
With outhouses still. But yeah, there is that power issue,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, thank you. Comments? Any other comments? I don't see any hands. So I'll call for a roll call vote on the motion.
Sure. Brianna Sullivan,
Yes.
Guy Wade,
Yes.
Mike Edgington, Jennifer Wingard.
Yes.
Well, you just had
I said that.
Amanda Sassy,
Yes.
motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. I'd be willing to go back to the hand online for the item, even though we finished discussion. So Crystal, if you had something to add?
I guess just looking for clarification, you guys just voted for writing a letter that would explain it? Is that what just passed? My question was in regards to the bond has the bond been priced out and how much would that cost a potential developer to go get one of those was my question, but thanks.
Thank you. We have first part of that answer. Margaret had her hand up.
I was just going to reread what the original motion had been from GBOS. So you said that you wanted to revert to the original motion. So the way that reads is GBOS moves to support the workforce housing proposal criteria and to have a formal draft AO produced by MOA Legislative Services for assembly review and process.
To revert to the original language, yes.
That is the original language.
The thing that came from that exam.
Correct.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I don't have much with regard to Crystal's question.
Thank you for the first part. Is anyone able to answer Crystal's question yet?
Yeah, the simple answer is no. The suggestion came up in LUC meeting and nobody proposed any numbers or any details. So this is now a suggestion. It's something that will go forward and be drafted into legislation. And at that point, these questions have to be resolved.
Okay, thank you. And just a note, if you have your camera on online, please turn it off. And we'll go to number 8. Girdwood specific STR regulations, discuss possibilities with GBSA powers. Update or?
No, my recollection was this was going to be moved to a work session. But I don't think we scheduled anything. Is that other
I
people's
think we
recollections?
did schedule.
Did we schedule something? I didn't
Joint
see it.
meeting?
We have a joint meeting for goals. I'm not sure if it got included in that or whether this is a separate item.
It has been confusing.
Yeah.
So I welcome better information on
Okay,
where
so
you
can
want to go.
Can I suggest that we, the joint meeting we have on May, middle of May?
13th.
13th. Thank you. Can I suggest we have this item on there as well?
We actually have it. It says right here.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I think-
CFSA housing and STR.
Excellent. In that case, I'll just move to postpone this until our regular meeting in May, by which time we will have had a work session.
All right, so that's a formal motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that? So this was a great placeholder, I would say, and reminder to be working on it. Okay, we'll go by assent on that. So we'll see that officially on the meeting upcoming. And number 9, Public Safety Advisory Committee structure and possible appointment of 2 new members. So we took PSAC and we started to have good idea discussion before this. So this is on the agenda for idea sharing right now. If anyone would like to go first.
I think we had and Jennifer brought this up earlier, we had a request from Tommy O'Malley to table this discussion until he returns from vacation. But from a scheduling, we wanted to just confirm that we're going to use the traditional space that PSAC was in, at least for now, to house the Girdwood Housing and Economic Committee meetings. So it'll be the first Monday of each month and move forward with that. And I think when it sounds like with the discussion with Tommy, we may be looking at a different structure and setup for this. So as we flush that out, I think we'll have a better idea. So at this point in time, from staff perspective, we're very supportive of just tabling this until we can have that discussion, as Tommy has some ideas associated with it. It's being one of the only really surviving members of this committee at this point in time.
Thank you. Mike,
I'm going to ask another scheduling question. We were going to have we normally have a meeting when new members are seated about reorganization, and I think we were going to include a discussion about potential a work session rather about potential structures in that.
I know that I heard that conversation from the meeting last week that I wasn't here for.
Okay.
I haven't yet put together a poll for that.
Okay.
My sense of this is that the second part of that conversation could be very long. And so I think the urgency is to get all of our members seated and organized. And until we've done that, I'm not sure how we can slide into the second discussion. So whether that happens at the same meeting or not is completely up to you. But I would just offer that you would have one very brand new member trying to participate in that.
So based on that information, I would suggest we postpone this item until our June meeting, not our May meeting. So we would not be holding PSAC meetings until then.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, or we need a second.
This is still up for discussion.
We discuss after or amend after the second. Okay. Anyone be willing to second that? I have an idea for an amendment to your motion. But
Get a second if I start again.
yeah,
Sorry, can you restate the motion?
Yeah, the motion is that we postpone this item until our June meeting. So that means PSAC would not have new members seated or would not be meeting between now and June. Which also opens up that slot for GHEC in May and June.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you. We had 2. Perfect. And for discussion, I would just, since you inferred that, was that therefore we also are requesting that Monday slot be filled with GHEC.
Yeah, I think because we wouldn't have 2 more members seated, they wouldn't have quorum.
Right.
I believe.
Oh, that also would be presumed. Okay, any other discussion on this? Guy?
Just remind me, do we have two people that want to serve on this board that haven't been brought on to the board? I mean, what you get that with them or?
We've been in regular communication with them, but we also been very clear with them that there's been a refocus on what the needs are for this board. And so one is we don't want to waste our time with getting them on the board to find out that maybe it's not needed anymore. So they've been understanding in that aspect. So, and they may not be interested by the time we get there and we'll be looking for new people, but we want to make sure that this is this committee has a purpose and is useful before we move forward with trying to get people on board.
And being that they're new, they wouldn't have input on that decision since we only have one committee member.
It's really within the hands of GBOS. It's a subcommittee to the GBOS. And so GBOS, I think at this point in time, needs to determine, do you still need this committee to be functional? And do we need to seek volunteers to put them on the board? So that's where we stand at this point.
Well, I appreciate you for keeping up to date.
Yep.
Actually, sorry, Amanda Tuttle here. The more I think about it, the issues of like the levy would be a great place to harbor a lot of this information. And I definitely would be willing to volunteer myself to be a part of a committee on however I would go about volunteering to do that, particularly with the extensive research, hundreds of hours that I've put into the levy issue and the lack of hydrology data in this valley. But anyways, I do think that our public safety committee board is very warranted concerning the issues that we even have standing on this agenda.
Thank you. Any other comments or further discussion? This motion? Okay, by assent, are there any objections to the motion to make this item come back in June? Seeing none, that motion passes. We'll go to number 10, no, 11? Sorry, 10, thank you. GBSA Housing Goals, GBOS and GHEC is having a joint meeting on May 13th. This also might be a placeholder unless there's something new in the packet or provide.
I'm going to continue on my run and move that we postpone this to our May meeting since we're holding a joint meeting / work session in the middle of.
Okay, we have a formal move. Do we have a second for that? A second?
Sorry, may I clarify? Are you saying you don't want to do this joint meeting?
No, I'm saying we do the joint meeting. I can't remember. Is it joint meeting?
I believe it is.
So we could take action at that joint meeting, or we may take action ourselves at our regular meeting afterwards. So I'm suggesting we postpone this item today until the meeting of the 23rd or whatever is our regular meeting. We will still be holding a joint meeting in the meantime. So I think I take your point, since this is the joint meeting. Since the one on the 13th joint meeting, perhaps it's not appropriate to postpone the item till then. We should postpone it for the 13th.
Right.
Yeah. Now I get it. Yeah. Okay. So I withdraw my.
Okay. My motion is withdrawn. Any other discussion on the item that we're not making action on?
So yeah, we postpone it till the 13th. That's what the action, the motion is. Thank you.
Number 11. Good.
We should be formally set for that.
Oh,
I'll second.
okay. Thank you for that second. We'll go by assent on that second also. If there's no other discussion. Okay, that motion passes. Thanks, everyone. Now we're on number 11, GHEC recommendation for GBOS request for municipal bed tax compensation. Jennifer, do you have?
I'll start this one.
Okay.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, there's interest because 15% of the room tax coming into the municipality now is from short-term rentals, which is about 6.5 million a year, and growing at about 33% a year. Because of that, there is interest from other parts of the municipality. I mean, not just other geographic areas. I mean, other groups within the municipality about trying to rationalize that and see if that money can be spent on something related to mitigation of the impacts of short-term rental, particularly in areas with high densities such as Girdwood, really mostly Girdwood. So this is kind of, to some extent, not moved on, but it's getting broader support. So what I would suggest is we already have, we've already made statements and we've passed resolutions which talk about using bed tax as a way to mitigate short-term rental impacts. I think before we do something very specific, we should let these other ideas marinate a little bit. Particularly, there may be some things coming through the first quarter budget revision, which clarifies what may be available. So then we can be more specific about exactly what we're asking. There will be a ordinance introduced soon, possibly at the next meeting, that will require short-term rental platforms to report the general locality, probably zip code level locality, for tax receipts. So I have not seen the precise language for it yet, but it will mean that we will have not just a guess of how much money is being paid by short-term rental room tax in Girdwood. We will have an exact number to the cent each quarter. So that will again put us in a much better position to at least understand what taxes are being raised locally and whether it would be beneficial for us to, Girdwood to benefit more directly from them. Again, we can talk about it now. My suggestion is to probably wait another month or so until we take action, because we have a better sense of what action is going to be most effective.
Gail, Jennifer.
So essentially keep this as a placeholder.
Yes.
Yeah. So the soonest we'd hear is the 23rd at the assembly meeting, what they are proposing.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that there'll be an ordinance to, hopefully it will pass. There'll be an ordinance for platforms to report the numbers when they actually turn up, whether it's 1 quarter or 3 quarters, I don't know. But by the end of this year, we should have accurate. And then I think the second issue is through the budget process, it's clear there are changes to the way that room tax can be spent. And that will bubble up through this first quarter budget revision process. So by the end of this month, we should have a better sense of what's available, and hopefully we'll begin to see numbers which are solid about the money being raised. So that's sort of 2 of the essential components. And then once there's more clarity on that, we can push for a particular solution and implementation.
Exciting. So, any other comments, Matt?
Yeah, hey, my question for you. I think based on the last meeting, you were meeting with the Budget Finance Committee.
Yeah, I gave a presentation of the Budget Advisory Committee.
So how do I get details?
Yeah, I think you missed my report, I think.
Yeah.
You came in. It went very positively, and the Budget Advisory Commission are going to continue talking it and probably take formal action on it. They're talking about recommending that the money raised from short-term rental room tax is more directly spent on, if possible, on mitigation of impact of short-term rentals.
Any issues in relation to like the bond agreement or legal issues?
Well, that's the other thing coming out of the bond thing, because we know now that finance has confirmed that a lot of the restrictions that applied up until last year no longer apply.
Okay.
And exactly how that ripples through to how it can be spent is kind of a legal question and a finance question, and that's actively being discussed right now.
Okay, so they're Anchorage municipalities.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Anything else on this item for today? Not seeing anything here or online in the room, so thank you, everyone. Look forward to more from that. Number 12.
I have to recuse myself from number 12.
Number 12. You may be recused from this, and I did rule earlier that Amanda didn't need to be recused, but if you'd like to be, you may also, Amanda. I feel like this item is also, like others, a placeholder specifically today, but Margaret could correct me if I'm wrong, because our meeting on the 29th is really.
What we've heard from the petitioners, there's no seeking action today. They want to have the meeting on the 29th with GBOS. So there's no action being seek today.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just add that any emails from the community or letters we receive will be gauged or guided toward that 29th meeting with LUC and us, GBOS LUC. Margaret?
Yeah, in the meeting packet, there's a page about what the community review process looks like. So I think that was something that was of interest to land use at their last meeting. So we get into this meeting packet. Sorry, I don't know.
It was, I saw it somewhere. There it is. So everyone can look at that.
Directing the public's attention to that and culminating here with the final updated draft to be released on the 24th of April, and then the GBOS LUC joint meeting, the 29th.
Okay, so final draft will be released the 24th. Great reminder for that. And then 5 days later-ish will be our meeting.
So what will happen is the Imagine Girdwood will submit their formal application, but we will also get a staff packet from the planning department. So there isn't a rush for GBOS to make a comment until we receive that staff packet. And at that point in time, so it does give you more time to review. You know, I think there was a question about we only have 5 days to review what's been given to us. There'll be a little bit larger period there where before we have a deadline to submit things back to the planning department. So just want to make sure you keep that in mind. We'll probably explain that better at that 29th meeting.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Kyle. I didn't misspeak. Any other comments from the room or from our other two board members on this? Okay, looking forward to the draft. I'm sure they're working hard on all the comments. So we'll go to the next agenda item. That is 13, LUC recommendation that GBOS and GHEC find the best path forward to put a P under dwelling mixed use in GC2 zoned land east of Main Street and change language contrary to this use in the intent section of Title 21, Chapter 9. Okay. Would like to speak to this as it came from land use.
I could speak to this because it came from land use, but actually it was really generated by GHEC. So, and we also have the main petitioner here as well. So Matt, would you be willing to speak to it?
I mean, I'll just speak to the GHC perspective. You know, I think the proposal that, recommend that you want to change.
Just in case people online can't hear you. I know you're loud, but not.
I know.
With the mic. Thank you.
Well, I think overall the GHEC was in favor of moving forward with the proposal to basically change the code in GCT2. We didn't think it was a tall order to make in light of the circumstance that Amanda has with that particular piece of property. It's kind of like it's a small change that can benefit and get development, allow her to do what she wants in terms of her property, in terms of housing or mixed use development. So I'm just in favor of it. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Yes, now it's up on the screen too, where it would be Mike.
Yeah, there's two questions we should think about here. One is, what's the best way of getting this implemented? Well, sorry, three things. One is one of the things that came out of LUC and GHEC discussions are that it's really something that people want to be applied to the smaller lots there, not the extra solid malls. Yeah, sorry. I probably need another drink. Yeah, so there are 2.5 things to discuss here. One is the what the best way of getting this done is, because there's a couple of different approaches. The second thing is that from LUC discussion and GHEC discussion, both bodies were of the opinion that this shouldn't apply to the ex-Tesoro Mall, Speedway Mall, but should apply to the other lots. So there's a question about how that gets implemented as well. And then the third thing is the particular place of dwelling multi-use or mixed use has a number of kind of additional requirements, that it's not like you can take commercial land and put housing on it. any form of housing has to be tied to commercial structures as well. So there's been general criticism of the way that gets implemented, both here and both in Girdwood and across the municipality. It's not quite as flexible as it appears. So I guess there's a question of, is that actually what we want to do? So when it comes to the specifics of how it gets implemented, the two general approaches are we can try and work something up ourselves, and because we are an advisory body, we can effectively submit it through planning, or we can just go direct to the assembly and ask the assembly to put this together as a proposal, and then they can introduce it and it may go through planning and zoning. So there are the two general approaches we can take: try and basically lead the effort ourselves, or go through the assembly first.
Okay.
And then we still have the technical question of finding some way of making sure it doesn't apply to the TESIFAR and doesn't apply to the other units. And then the third issue of we have to understand what it actually means by having it in that row versus other rows.
Any comments from the board?
Question if you go straight to the planning that's going to go in front of the assembly for a vote as well, right?
Eventually, yeah. I think my understanding is text amendments can come from advisory bodies within the municipality, which includes us, but they effectively go into the queue for planning, and planning can, activate at some point. Or the assembly can also effectively, text amendment can go straight to the assembly, and then the assembly typically refers it back to planning and zoning, although not always. Sometimes they just go ahead with it themselves. So we can take either of those two approaches. But we have to be clear about exactly what we want, which is where these other questions come in.
Sorry, could I just, I was wondering if I could get confirmation. Was there actually an LUC vote about the concern about the Tesoro Mall? Because my understanding is that concern arose and then kind of fell back in the theory that there really wasn't much that could happen there anyway, given the development that was fully developed. So do we have, was there an actual?
That's the motion right there in green.
And above it, to interject, looks like that earlier motion was amended several times and ultimately restated. It's the green motion.
It was discussed in their discussion, but directly in the motion, I don't think it's
The final motion.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
that's the way I remember it as well.
So it says at the top, it does address the issue about the Girdwood Station Mall at the very top. But that's, as you say, it's not in the motion itself.
Right. Throughout the course of the conversation, as I remember it, the concern abated somewhat as people understand the degree to which that lot was already developed.
I guess also to chime in with the two, if we look at these as two options, which one would be the most efficient way to go and make us look like we are being specific and know what we're asking for versus lots of round and round from either the assembly or planning.
Tried both in the past, and they've been stumbled in both directions.
Okay, thank you. Amanda has her hand up.
Okay, so yes, sorry, Amanda Tuttle again for those online. So the definition, I just want to clarify, and Mike, I apologize, I'm drowning. I actually closed my restaurant again today because I have no staff. And it's going to get worse, guys. Alyeska Resort is cutting their J1 program and they're only getting 35 J1s. That means I'm gonna have no staff going into the summer. I've got till May 15th to figure this out, or I'm closing my doors. It's that bad right now. This is worse than 2021. On that note, okay, dwelling mixed use by definition, and the plan says it's a dwelling that is located on the same lot or in the same building. Mike, that was part of the question, right? The dwelling by definition here on page 9-46, the residential use can be separate or in the same building as my commercial use, either of which those options I'm completely fine with. I'm resilient. I will figure this out, but I have to have some sort of housing option as soon as possible. So I guess that opens up my question then, Mike, where are you finding these additional requirements under dwelling mixed use? Because I kind of looked around town too, just doing my own little investigation and what some of the other commercial developments in this community, what they did their permitting under. Some of them I feel are actually using this dwelling mixed use, and that's very much so what I would like to build. So I guess if you could help explain some of that to me so I can understand what you're saying.
I'm just trying to find my notes. There's two different parts of Title 9 or Chapter 9 where it talks about it, and I don't think they're not directly linked in the use table.
Yeah, so all the dwellings are under that section 2 residential uses. That's the only place they're defined.
The use regulations.
Correct. Well, land use planning.
Can we come back to this question just so I can do some double checking?
Okay, Jennifer.
I feel like we don't, I don't understand why we wouldn't toss this to planning and zoning. It sounds to me like they're gonna end up getting it regardless. Number one. Number two, I don't see any reason to involve the assembly at this stage. Like, let's keep it as simple as possible. Let's trust planning and zoning to let us know if there's other sections that need to be changed. But let's get after this P and get you some help as soon as possible. I think we could end up dinking around and dithering with all kinds of worrying about particulars here where I trust planning and zoning to understand what other changes we may need to make. I really want to see you get some relief as soon as possible.
I appreciate that.
I tend to agree, you know, I mean, we go into the assembly, just gonna go back to planning. So, yeah, and, you know, I mean, I think, like you say, I mean, they'll explain it to us. I mean, you know, it's a shame, but you almost, they're in planning because they know these laws and they know, you know, we can redo this 4 different ways, I'm sure. So path forward, did LUC or GHEC have a recommendation path forward? Somebody that's in there, how do we initiate this?
Here's their motion right here. In green.
Yeah. Can you make that bigger?
So for the purposes of discussion here, I'd like to move that we pursue this with best, send this to planning and zoning, asking to have a P put in the dwelling mixed use, the table of allowed uses for land zone GC2. Change language as necessary in the intent paragraph, but if we can't find that or whatever else, let's at least get this moving to planning and zoning. That's my motion.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second that, I got.
Okay, 2 second, third. Thank you. Go ahead.
So this is in a form of a letter of recommendation to planning and zoning.
Can I just address this? The actual way you have to do it according to code is you have to submit a petition in the form of an ordinance with the planning director. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what we've done in the past. So we have to have it in ordinance form. So basically, explicitly, this what code change needs to be applied, and then that's submitted to the as a petition to the planning department or to the director of the planning department. And in that process, if we submit something that can't be achieved, then there's a conference process where they tell us, well, maybe you're not getting exactly what you want. That's how it's supposed to work. And sometimes it has.
Would the mover like to change the language to include the
Or
petition?
of things, yes.
Okay. That makes sense too. Does that agree with the second, the 2 seconds?
Yeah, I guess I'm just missing, like, who's gonna fill this petition now? I mean, do we need to decide that today? And
We
Like-
should to
Yeah,
interrupt,
so-
we should probably decide 2 members to work on that petition during this discussion before we vote. And any other thoughts and considerations? I'll let other board members speak. Who wants to speak next?
I am happy to work on it.
You're gonna do the same. I'm happy to work with Jennifer.
Okay, we have 2 volunteers, Jennifer and Mike, to work on the petition. And just to add that I feel comfortable with what we've heard from land use and GHEC and this in principle. And so if in your drafting, you find that there are things you really need to ask the body, we could hopefully add it to an agenda coming up, but we want to get this done very quickly as we all understand the seasonality of where we live. And it's the best for needs for this path forward. Okay.
one more question on the process. When did the planning and zoning, when can this be submitted? Can it be submitted at any time? And, or is there, wait till their meetings? How's that?
Sam?
So I probably would say that we would help arrange you a pre-application process to talk about this change. And so you could meet with the planning and they can give you some steps about how to get ready for it. And then when you're ready, you can submit the packet at any time. But that's probably the best step so they see it coming and then at least they can give pointers to Mike and Jennifer through a discussion. And then at that point, they can finish their application and submit it.
And in terms of schedule, there's a calendar for applications. So for example, in the case of Magic Girdwood, we're expecting to submit at the beginning of May, and that means there would be a hearing, planning and zoning in July. And then it would then get scheduled to the assembly for about September, October time. And then that's when it would be implemented. So this is not going to happen this year, basically.
That all process.
Or not before the end of the construction season.
But I do like the anytime I submit things for the clients, the pre-application is always greatly appreciated. So the discussion for that.
Okay, we have another comment in the room.
Well, I was actually gonna ask timeline, so.
Oh, okay, good. Anything else from the board? I'll ask for a roll call vote on the
Sure.
motion.
Brianna Sullivan,
Yes.
Guy Wade.
Yes.
Mike Edgington.
Yes.
Jennifer Wingard,
Yes.
Amanda Sassy.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, great, everyone. Thank you for that and happy working to project. So, we're on 14. Discuss conversion of accessory dwelling units rental to long-term rental by policy. Number 14. I want to say the wrong name.
Yeah,
I see the wrong name on there, but I know it's Brett. Brett, are you here to talk about number 14?
I don't think he is here.
Okay. Does anyone want to speak to it?
It may be a subject of the joint meeting of the housing goals.
Yeah, I'd suggest we postpone until
Yeah.
13th. Do we need to take action?
Formally, I'm comfortable with formal or informal on that.
So,
Let's do formal.
Postpone to our joint meeting on the 17th, or 13th of May.
Wait a second. Okay, thank you, Guy. Any discussion on that motion? We'll go by assent. If there's no other discussion or comments, and that motion passes for item number 14. There's been a request for a quick break. It is 8:35. Are there any objections to a quick break?
Here, what time are you going to return?
5 minutes, so 8:40, please.
Okay.
Please and thank you. Okay. Drink more water.
So hot.
We're right 8:40, Kyle.
Till 8:40.
I got it. I got it.
Okay. Sorry, we're not 8:40 yet. First.
Still light out.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Just number 5.
It's 8:40. We are coming back to the meeting and on number 15, request for GBOS support for a 7-day traffic study on Arlberg Road by MOA Traffic Department in summer 2024.
Before I bring this up, two clerical corrections there. We want to do the 7-day study on Alberg and Timberline Road. And we're seeking a resolution of support from the board. And we'd be just using the same resolution language that we've used for the other traffic studies. We found really valuable data that came out of the 7-day study down on Mount Hood. And with the 1-day study and the amount of traffic we saw on Timberline, we would like to see that. And then this study on Alburg would give us base data for what traffic's going out to the hotel now. So that we can have idea what that means for future development out there going forward as well, address the speed on that road to get a better understanding of it. So we're requesting a resolution of support for a 7-day traffic study for Alburg and Timberline Road by MOA Traffic Department in summer 2024.
Thank you, Kyle. I have a quick question on that. Who chooses where that placement on the road is? Like on Timberline, people that live the closest might not hit the line if it's farther down Timberline. Where is it to get?
Well, it's probably the place that they can safely put it in. But this section that would be between Alyeska Highway and the Vale Hill intersection.
Okay.
That aspect. So we'd be focusing on that intersection.
And then where do you think they'd put on Arlberg?
We want Alburg at the bottom of, we would want it at the bottom at Moose Meadows Park.
Yeah.
That's where we tend to see the highest speed. And then that really tells you how many people are actually going out to the hotel from there.
Thank you. I think we had other questions from the board too.
Yeah, a couple of quick questions. One is, have the resort Pomeroy actually, have you spoken to them about that? I just wonder if they have either their own data or they'd be interested in this data. Wonder if they would support it.
I have not talked to them directly about it, and
might be worth a question.
I haven't seen any measurements out there in 12 or 13 years.
And my other question was, do we have that other resolution available, the previous one? Because we could potentially have to verify the language, make the changes now and then pass it.
While he's doing that, are there any other thoughts on the board?
Just a question. What do those cost? Do we pay for those?
No, it's part of your area-wide taxes. So planning department is funded through area-wide. So yeah. So we had a traffic calming study. So MOA traffic and volume study. And so here's the resolution. We'd be using something very similar to this. There's a resolution in 22. I'll make it bigger.
Thank you.
In case you don't have your readers. So we'd be using this. And so, but we would definitely put language in there. And they were very flexible. They started out with a 1-day study on Mount Hood, and through talking with residents, they expanded it to a 7-day study. And then the residents also had a recommendation where to place the measuring, and they moved it to those locations. So they really, the traffic department data people like to geek out, so they like to get measurements.
Fine. Any comments on this resolution in front of us? Suggestions?
Yeah, I've got a quick suggestion. Third whereas, this is about volume and speed, which we do want, but not necessarily for traffic calming. Is that correct?
Not at this point in time. So we will probably remove the traffic calming, but we do want it to appear in their traffic calming study that they publish each winter. So we want it, because if it does qualify as a road to be mitigated, then we don't want that to be overpassed that we're seeing.
Is it appropriate for us to make kind of changes to this thing now and then just pass it rather than bring it back? Or does it matter? I
think it'd be good for you to make the changes now and pass it so that we can get this in, so we can get it in their work plan. Because if we wait till May, we may be behind the ball. So they're going to start their studying.
Suggestions then. Can we take third whereas and just remove the traffic calming reference? So actually, I take that back. Let's replace the third whereas. So remove the third whereas and replace it with whereas a study on a traffic study on Timberline drive conducted in summer 2005 showed 2,500, whatever, daily trips. It would be helpful to, we want to verify that over a week.
Yep.
So we'd like to increase that to 7. We want to increase that to 7 days to get a better picture of traffic. Then we can take out just therefore to promote a safer community. So if we just have therefore the Girdwood Board of Supervisors request that. And then replace the list with Timberline and Arlberg.
Sure.
At the locations you specify.
Okay.
That clear, Margaret?
Yeah, I'll send a draft and let you wordsmith it too. And I think our roads and utilities chair will be signing this. So
Amanda, yep.
that'll be working with Amanda. Amanda, are you available for that in the next couple days, or should we assign that to somebody else?
I am in Anchorage at a training for the next few days. Very busy. Sorry.
I'm around till Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Okay.
Can we assign that? Or what do you want to do?
Would anyone move to have Guy sign this, or we had another hand up as well, so the discussion going, but we have
Yep.
offers to help.
I was going to say, I think if we could vote on the change in language first, if there's agreement on that, then I think that.
Okay.
I'd be happy. I trust Margaret and whoever we assign to make sure it's grammatically correct. I think we're agreeing concept.
Before we have those edits, do you have more edits, Jennifer?
No, well, actually, I just wanted to check with Kyle to just make sure that, does that cover everything there?
Yep.
For sure, we don't,
Yep.
nothing else we need to. Okay.
Nope. 7-day study for Alberg and Timberline Road.
And you're happy with the whereases?
Yeah, I'm happy with the warehouses.
Okay, are there any objections to the edits made? Go by sense that those edits are acceptable to everyone. And we have an offer from Guy to sign. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure I phrased the motion correctly in the first place, but I think we amended this. We should probably just vote to say we approve it.
All right. So would you like to make the motion?
Yeah, so I
Approve
move
the-
that we approve the amended resolution.
Great. You have a second.
Second.
Jennifer seconds. Any other discussion on this? Okay, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Sure. Brianna Sullivan,
Yes.
Guy Wade,
Yes.
Mike Edgington,
Yes.
Jennifer Wingard,
Yes.
Amanda Sassy.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Great. Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Kyle and Margaret, for staying on this. And 7-day idea. Number 16, set agenda for MOA GBOS quarterly meeting on April 29th at 4 p.m. This was in the packet, and this is January 22nd's draft and final. So Margaret, you can add anything you'd like to our brainstorming. No? Any suggestions of removal or additions for number 1 through 4 that are there from before?
I think we should probably add the topic about airport land use.
Okay.
Perhaps request the planning director to attend.
I do know that HLB plans to present the industrial park alternatives there.
Should we keep that? So if we keep that as HLB items for their Girdwood Industrial Park, that's
Yep.
number 1 or 2?
We see that's the primary item. I don't know if the board has anything they want to talk to them about the 1-year and 5-year plan draft. I think that's,
I think not. But I don't want to speak for everyone.
I think the likelihood is it will be adopted by then.
okay.
It's being heard on the 23rd. I wonder if we can move the whole item under item 2. It's still an HLB item.
We just like just the update.
Their planning or whatever.
Yep.
Their update, yes.
Okay.
So put that under HLB. and then GIP under HLB items, I guess, and they'll be invited. I think it would be prudent to keep number 1 on there.
We're just gonna ask about that. Do we have additional things to say from last time?
I think they were gonna have a meeting with staff. I don't know if it ever, what came out of it.
Well, what's going on right now, the assembly level is what it was going to be shared with us, but they moved it to assembly before we actually had a direct meeting with them about it. So I don't really, it's very unclear as to where this is going at this point. It seems like it's in the assembly's hand as to what they're drafting. I don't know how it will have any effect for Girdwood. That's what I'm unclear about. And maybe that could be to explain the latest on this issue.
Let's leave it on for that then.
Okay.
And Mike looks like.
Yeah, I was going to agree. I think there hasn't been much thought on the various drafts I've seen from the administration. Not really. I don't think they haven't thought properly about the impact on Girdwood. It's obviously a different situation here. So if nothing else, we're just reminding people we exist.
Okay.
Circumstances are different.
Okay.
And who would we invite for that one? Same as last time?
Yeah, I would probably say that go to the city manager, see if he can explain it.
Maybe Parks as well.
Maybe Parks, yeah. Mike Braniff.
Yeah, Mike's involved in it.
Yeah.
Okay.
By that time, there may have been more things brought from the administration to the assembly.
And then what about number 4? Seems like that's being worked. We got a response. He gave us we got a response that they basically can't share anything because of
I forget what the word.
privacy issues with businesses and giving out their personal revenues or business revenues.
This was Jennifer's idea, so I defer to you.
Oh, I'm just debating whether or not we want to, push back on that. I've had trouble believing that the combined taxes actually give us any idea whatsoever about proprietary stuff. If we could at least get gross number. I would like more explanation about why that's not a number they could give us personally, but that we can talk about that.
So of all 3 of those, for example,
Exactly.
instead of asking for that, okay, we know we cannot have the marijuana and not quite the alcohol, but we have the bed, and then you're asking for the gross.
Yes.
I think that would be a fair.
I could pull up that email again so that you guys can read what the response was.
My recollection was for some of the taxes, they don't have geography.
So
So that was part of the reason they couldn't give it to us.
that was the bed tax.
Yeah, and I think one of the others.
So my other thought about this is this might be a back burner item until we can get some of the geographical data coming through. And then at that point, revisit this.
And I know we had, how I remember is this says July because one of our meetings never happened. And then January, this is January's agenda. So the email Kyle's looking up is from probably January. So do we keep words like this even, well, we can wait for Kyle to find the email, but
I'll pull it. I have it right here. Let me just get it set.
do we want to say from July?
Oh, I see.
If we keep it.
I think we could just get rid of, well, if we do that, I think we could just just say follow up from January. And then clarification on request for information. I think now that I remember the issue with the bed tax, the reason we couldn't get that's right. The reason we couldn't get the combined thing is because they said they didn't have the bed tax.
Yeah, so I'll give you, so that for alcohol, Treasury currently has no ability to pull revenue data from our database specifically for the Girdwood area. Our database software reports are built specifically for use by the IT department. Historically, Treasury has not tracked retailers by locations, and we have no application for that specific data criteria and results. We currently don't have the capability to sort data by geographical area. Marijuana, there is only one marijuana retailer in Girdwood, so providing tax revenue data received by the MA would be disclosing proprietary information, which is not permitted under code. Those confidentiality of records. And then fuel taxes are filed and paid by registered fuel industry dealers. So that means the wholesalers, which they are currently reporting, 15 reporting, none of which are located in Girdwood. They report the overall volume of sales. So there is currently no way to sort data graphically. So the stations aren't paying it, the wholesalers are. And then the vast majority of room tax revenue comes from hosting platforms, which does not report property owners or which specific properties they tax apply to, as there's no requirement for them to do so. So that sounds like what's going right now in front of the Assembly. There's a total of 18 individual registered STRs in Girdwood, Alyeska Highway, Alyeska Hotel, and Vescasa are among those registered. The vast majority of revenue from those 18 would be from these two registrants, which then makes the information proprietary in nature. So that's what they're.
Well, then I might propose that we back burner this until we see what comes through the Assembly, because if we get that geographical location data coming through, then that changes this whole thing, at least for one of those.
Yeah.
I think the answer is no on the rest, but that's the most interesting one, anyway, I think.
Okay, so the clear suggestion is to not have it on this agenda, but remember it for future. And this is not to the item necessarily, but since I've been paying more attention being on this body, I think in the future, the alcohol tax that Anchorage is getting and that we would like to receive something of, we need to keep advocating for whatever we can, whether it's training for our first responders or something that's good for the community from those taxes every year, even if it's repeat.
That has been some of the good stuff that's come out of PSAC. They've been, at least Tommy's trying to stay on top of that.
So good thing to keep in mind, hopefully. Anything else on this agenda for adding anything?
Just clarify, I made a suggestion that we should add the item about airport and land use and have planning director there. Is that good?
Okay.
Confirm that's on there.
Do you have a suggestion of what item number?
Well,
4?
Replace 4
Or keep it simple.
on there.
We have one question in the room or suggestion.
So am I understanding this right? So HLB will be in this meeting? That's who this is actually more with, you guys? Am I wrong?
We invite whoever it applies to most to either speak to these items or answer our questions. So HLB, someone or 3 will be at the meeting virtually.
I would love to see HLB formally answer this community on their management of the levy. They are the owner of the levy. They are solely responsible for its maintenance. I brought it up in their meeting and they had zero discussion on it.
That's right. That is on our agenda later tonight. And we can, just for the knowledge of everyone, we can add to this. But this is our meeting where we can discuss it among each other.
I would be interested in what HLB has to say about it. If anything, I mean, Amanda's raised a lot of questions, and so it's a great opportunity for a response.
I agree. I think it'd be timely to insert it under the HLB items for question.
Okay.
Thank you for that reminder. Just focusing right here. So anything else on that? I think we have a great revised agenda. Thank you, Margaret, everyone. We're good on that. I'll go to the next item. Number 17, discuss levies in Girdwood, California Creek levy, protecting town center, and Glacier Creek / California Creek / Turnigan Arm Levy protecting Old Girdwood. So we introduced this last meeting very, very quickly. Who would like, Kyle, do you want to start this and then?
Sure. Through Amanda's efforts, this has been brought forward. And so we did some digging to figure out when these levees were built and who built them. And there's really no record or engineer documents associated with the levees that run through town. We have two particular areas where levees are protecting different either commercial or residential zones. One would be right here in Town Square. There is a earthen berm levee that runs through right behind Creekside from the school and down through Town Square to where California Creek crosses under Alyeska Highway. The land that runs through is the first portion is school district and then goes into HLB parcel through this portion here. And then down in Old Town, there is the levee. I don't have the map here, but I can show you in other ways here. County map, but it runs right through here and goes from the railroad trestle down to Seward Highway. And this one, we believe through talking through people who were here after the 64 earthquake, this was built back after the 64 earthquake. As we talked about earlier, a lot of this land dropped during the 64 earthquake, and the next morning during the next high tide, water was coming into the Old Town after the earthquake happened. And so they believe at some point at post 64, probably quickly within 64, 65, this berm with a levee was put in. And since then has functioned as the levee and as a road, which access these properties here in the rear. So it's actually the road is not in the established platted right of way, but falls along the levee to get to these parcels in the off of East Street out there. And so as Amanda mentioned, this is on HLB parcels. This is HLB parcel here. Part of the levee is on railroad right-of-way on both sides of it. And then it does connect into the Seward right-of-way down here, which I believe is right about right there, right along this line. So, so there's 3 different land ownerships in this area where this levee runs. You can most likely confer that it was purposely built to connect these two with this straight shot, the way the creek comes through here, and the way that the levee was built from abutment to abutment that was built there. And most likely it served as an access road to get to this abutment, probably with construction of this bridge when this bridge was put in for the railroad, and then down to here in that aspect. So this is all conferred, nothing confirmed, just looking at the way it was developed. But at this point in time, there's no real true maintenance program associated with this. We do maintain the road top, which is what our normal standards, but we do not maintain, the service area does not maintain the levee itself. We do watch it, though we are prepared to respond as we do with other areas, but it's not within our normal maintenance program. That's where we stand at this point. So.
Thank you, Kyle. Mike?
Yeah. Have you had a chance to talk to watershed management about this levee and really, how it relates to the other similar structures across the municipality?
Yeah, they had no record of it. It has not really been in their thinking. They don't really have a levee maintenance program. A lot of times once a levee is established, it really becomes the Army Corps of Engineers' responsibility to permit it and then establish a maintenance program that whoever the owner is has to follow. And we don't have anything established with this. Most likely this whole levee was put in pre flood mapping and FEMA requirements. And so it has never been addressed.
understanding from reading through a lot of the Army Corps documentation is most of the levies across the country, they don't have any responsibility for because they weren't involved in construction, or if they were construction, they then passed it off to a municipal entity or some private entity. So it seems they only have a maintenance responsibility for a very small number, not many in our state.
And most of them probably are built post flood or disaster.
Right, yeah.
And then built under a permitting process through the Army Corps of Engineers.
Oh, awesome. Are there any other, within the valley, are there any other places that are somewhat similar to this? I mean, I'm thinking like the channelization of Alyeska Creek and areas like that. Is that kind of analogous to a levee, or is the
Well, I would say
areas where various housing is higher than the river height, so they're up on banks.
I mean, yeah, but Alyeska Creek's a prime example. I mean, we've been addressing that now for years, trying to get that fixed. You know, the lower portion of Alyeska Creek where all that water comes out, creates a lot of issues down there for those residents on Lake Hood and Mount Tahoe. So, you know, we progressively have tried to push through getting a study done there, and then we've done design docs, and now we've started the process. We started with Lake Tahoe, and now we're working on Davos to replace those so that we reduce the flood risk there. Those culverts were put in quickly post the 1996 typhoon, the remnant of the typhoon that came through Oscar. And so they were sort of just thrown in, and we've recognized that they weren't put in properly, and they've actually ended up causing us more issues with deposition than if they were put in correctly. And they also aren't fish passage qualified, and so we're trying to address two issues there. So yeah, in Alyeska Creek all the way up to Chair 4 or Ted's Express there has been channelized the whole way up. And so every time we've done a project like Olympic Mountain Loop, all those areas have had to been readdressed and re-engineered through a hydrology to make them more.
So that's an example of an area where we have taken responsibility as a service area.
Correct.
But obviously we have these two levies in particular, we have not taken responsibility for and probably don't want to.
And
maybe very high.
We've had to take responsibility because the established right of way crosses those.
Okay.
So they become our responsibility because we're maintaining a road that goes over those.
Okay. So isn't that the case here?
The case here is, yeah, it's very unusual. The road is sitting on top of the levee, but actually the real right of way has not been developed.
Okay. So it's not something we have to take responsibility for in the way we have before.
No, unless we go in there and start making improvements, and then it becomes our then we have to go through the permitting process. And I mean, what I mean by improvements, we get directly involved with the dike, the levee.
Okay, Amanda? Oh. Would you like to ask now?
Sure.
Yes.
Do we know what the plans are for the railroad rebuilding that bridge?
Not a priority on our list of bridges to address at this point in time.
Okay.
That bridge is probably post 1964.
1925.
Still original 1925.
The 1925 original built bridge. Alaska Railroad, I'm in direct contact with them because obviously their jurisdiction, which I don't know, it was 11 o'clock at night when I was able to present this last time, and I didn't bring my paper. So it's Alaska Railroad jurisdiction for the first 100 feet south of the trestle on either side. So obviously there's jurisdiction supersedes. So when I called Brian Lindemood, and he's the VP of engineering at the Alaska Railroad, he's who I'm doing all my contacts with. They are aware that it is an issue, but they actually, what I found out interesting last week is that there's a master agreement with the Alaska Railroad and state DOT. And interesting enough, out of all the research that I've done, including all the heritage land banks, which should have disclosed this under Title 25 40.025C that they're not compliant with, the railroad has a master agreement that specifically lists the Girdwood levee. And it is that 100 feet, which is where the levee is catastrophically failing due to the channelization of Glacier Creek. is in their jurisdiction. It is actually Alaska DOT. Brian asked me to hold off for 48 hours before I reached out to DOT because he knows that they're unbeknownst. Levies are not regulated at the state or the municipal level. They are only regulated at the federal level, which would be the Army Corps of Engineers. This levee is approximately 5 blocks long. As you can see, it is not listed in the national database of levees for the nation, which is a little scary. But in addition to that, so the federal highway, I do also have some documentation that's coming where I believe I have found where the levee was built. However, I don't want to speak on it until that document's in my hand. But that about 1,400 feet in the middle is owned by HLB, and obviously the jurisdiction of the federal highway and the jurisdiction of state-owned, federally subsidized railroad. And now the state's involved. So it'll be interesting to hear what they say. But as I pointed out to Brian the other day, and what is also of concern about this is that no matter how much we fix this levee, this levee is going to continuously fail due to the constriction of the river and the channelization of Glacier Creek. As you guys can see in this picture, you know, how the Glacier Creek is coming in on that northeast side and then completely hits the railroad and then almost does that 90-degree turn where it goes underneath the bridge and kind of where you can see it's kind of heading towards Andy Hinland's house. And what's of also significant importance about this is that not only is this bridge not built to the standards that they would build today, and I don't remember the standards codes, but I remember Brian mentioned that, yeah, they're well aware that it does not meet the flow capacity. You got California Creek that's coming in there, but California Creek is coming in about 3 blocks to the west here of this trestle, and that California Creek is completely teeing into the railroad bed. And so then it's forced to be, to run along the railroad and where it creates a confluence right there at the trestle. So we already got the channelization of Glacier Creek going on. And then in addition, you're talking massive flow of California Creek coming in and having this giant confluence. And you're forcing California Creek to come in and make a right-hand bend and is making this boiling hydraulic because there's so much water being constricted behind this levee. And what is interesting to know and that I want you guys to be aware of is that it is against code, state and federal, to do any sort of upstream development in navigable waters that creates more than a 10% increase of rise in water level. Obviously, anything that we do upstream right now is causing this more than 10%. But the problem is we don't have no data because the only data that's ever been written on Glacier Creek to date was published in 1969. HLB's website, which is where I specifically asked them in their work plan and received their formal response that they are completing the environmental assessments. The most recent assessment was only completed in 2007. So we're talking 23-year-old data, and not a single one of the 10 plans even meets the criteria of a site-specific plan, as they should outline historical and areas of concern downstream, particularly with wetland development. The community of Old Girdwood and the levee and the constriction of Glacier Creek at the trestle is not mentioned in a single one of the 10 plans outlined on HLB's website. Again, this comes back to Title 25, 40.025C. You can look it up, and it specifically outlines what HLB should be requiring to do environmental assessments on. It says, and the code states that if the Anchorage Comprehensive Plan and supporting programs throughout Anchorage are insufficient, then HLB is required to create the site-specific plans. So the irony of this whole thing is I started out because, you guys, this is also my major concern. I want to develop this property, but I'm going to get flooded. And so are all these homes. But in addition to that, we also got Chugach Electric. We've got Instar. any sort of flood, because everything that's going into Old Girdwood, we are sinking. The building codes have not been upkept. So we're sinking. Meanwhile, we are completely boxed in by a federal highway, a state highway, a federally subsidized railroad, and a defunct HLB that is not managing the public infrastructure. And so, so we're all sinking inside. Once that river starts coming into Old Girdwood, that water is going to have nowhere to go, because all of our culverts, as you guys are aware, are clogged. I mean, I know you guys come beside my property and we tried to trench it out because all the little channelways in Old Girdwood are flooding the streets every time it rains too hard. That water, so that if that levee goes, it's not going to go without taking that trestle, and it's not or taking the highway with it, but it's also going to shut down transportation. It's going to shut down electricity for everybody. It's going to shut down gas to this valley. These are real hazards, and HLB needs to be held compliant. But also we need to make sure that the railroad high prioritizes the rebuilding of this trestle, because until that trestle is rebuilt, to understand the flow of Glacier Creek, which drains 62 square miles of rainforest, we're always going to have a problem.
Thank you. I guess I have a very general question, but I'd like to hear what the board has to say. Yeah, and for the record, Jennifer has to leave. She disclosed it at the beginning of the meeting, so 9:16 she leaves.
So I have one kind of question statement. I know there's been a few issues that have come up recently, I think partly going through the comprehensive plan update has highlighted these, where we don't have good information on hazards in Girdwood. Things like seismic hazards have been analysed and studied across the Bowl and Leave Eagle River, but not down here. And we have the same issue with drainage. And I know for a number of years, there's been a potential capital project for doing a hydrological study of Girdwood across the whole community. I'm wondering if that's something we should prioritize. That's really a question for, I mean, would the thing that we've been discussing as a potential future capital investment of a hydrological study, would it cover issues such as, levees, risk points, ownership responsibility?
And to how you write the scope of work, right?
Was that intended? I mean, under the anticipated scope, was it drainage across the whole valley, across the occupied areas of the valley, or was it specifically about roads?
I'm sorry, are you asking about something we put out already?
No, sorry, we've had an item on the potential future capital projects for a couple of years of doing a drainage study in Girdwood.
Yes.
And what I'm trying to tease out is that the same as the hydrological study that was mentioned earlier, and we're kind of thinking about discussing, or is it a very distinct item?
Well,
could it be the same?
The drainage study that we currently have is really focused towards the service area's responsibilities. So the different drainage zones throughout the area that the service area maintains.
Okay.
So, and with that, we identified problems that needed to be addressed. And out of that drainage study, we've been addressing the lower portion of Alyeska Creek. And we've done a ton of work through that study that addressed things throughout the subdivisions. I don't think the levee was not a area of focus during that study. And so we have talked about updating that study.
Okay.
We haven't got to it, but if you could put into the scope of work that we do that. That study did not take in the whole drainage valley. It did pull in references to material or data from the valley, but it didn't look, because if you're going to look at the whole drainage, you're going to go back up into Crow Creek and Glacier Creek, and you're going to look at the outflow and everything along those lines. So a comprehensive drainage study for the entire Glacier Creek Valley has not been completed.
Okay, so we have a drainage study for the developed areas and how it impacts service area infrastructure. So I guess to refine my question, my understanding then is we've been talking for a couple of years about seeking capital funds to update that study.
Correct.
And yeah, basically I'm wondering if what we should do is prioritize that and at least increase the scope to include the impact on Old Girdwood, which would have to include be a flooding risk there.
Sure. Old Girdwood we studied Old Girdwood in the past study. And, and what we deal with there is it's a very flat area. It's controlled by the outflow and tides and things along those lines. And groundwater is significantly high in that. So it's always been a very difficult area to manage, and that whole portion out to the highway is wetland. So it's difficult for us to manage the drainage through that area.
Yeah, so I think so where is it being degraded or changed? I mean, I spent 25 years every summer playing on that area, and just like where is that, can we identify?
It's pretty much right where that cursor will come down, like right in there. It's hard to see with the vegetation map, but when you're walking up there and you can see it. Our last high water event, I walked, you can see it erode there. It is eroded.
Probably a really good thing that there is a good vegetation ban.
I think that vegetation map's the only thing that's saving that levee right now.
But, I wonder. Yeah, to indicate a failure or some kind of something to get the property owners of this to react to, sure.
I do have the DOT levee program director coming down here and meeting with me here. We're just waiting for a little bit more snow to melt so they can actually see the vegetation, but they're coming down here to do an actual on-site with me. So they can visually understand what's going on. I will tell you, Mike, on your thought, I think that one thing that I would really love to see is us get a hydrology meter on the trestle at least, so we can at least start getting some data output so we can understand what's going on there rather than me just saying what I've seen. And I have reached out to USGS, but frankly, I'm drowning with the restaurant, so I haven't had time to follow up. But USGS, they are the one who installed our water station, our hydraulics flow meter, on the Glacier Creek Alyeska Bridge. I would think that there's definitely some sort of funding out there that I would love to get our hands on for us to help us, to get these baseline data, because that's our problem. We've got no data, and no data is bad data, particularly when it comes to urban development.
So DOT, I would assume they did a huge discharge and scour study for the bridge they built.
Yes.
Yeah, I just can't imagine they would build that bridge without a discharge. Maybe not area-wide hydrology, but at least a discharge and scour, and they always scour.
Well, and look how much bigger that bridge is. Look how much bigger that bridge is, allowing that river to migrate underneath there. And 1,500 feet upstream. Look how constricted. That trestle bridge is no wider than my condo. Yeah, it's just the trestle needs to be updated to meet the flow. And honestly, if that was updated, the levee would probably maintain itself pretty easily. Yeah, and I do have some documents coming that should prove that this was federally built. Which is going to be awesome, because that means then, you guys, that HLB is not compliant with federal law.
Interesting.
And yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what the DOT levy specialist says. Because I'd be totally supportive of getting that USGS monitoring station on there. It helps us so much. Every time there's a storm, I'm constantly watching the Glacier Creek going there, and it helps us to figure out things as we start to respond at 2 a.m. and seeing what's going on. If we had another levy station or another monitoring station down there on that trestle, it just reinforces our ability to get better predictions.
And it implicitly gives us information about California Creek as well.
Correct.
Because after
and it's pretty easy to install, right?
Yeah, but the problem is it takes time to tune it in. So they watch it in each flood event, and because what's happened, if you watch this station out here, they've changed the different levels of risks over the time as they've learned what the creek is doing and what it's not doing. So, and it, it does, I think in this case, this is pretty constrained. Over here, we get more migration of the creek. And so sometimes they have to like move it around to make sure they're still in the main channel. So this will be, if they did it right in the middle, it'd be right main channel. So, and that's where we really have to get the railroad on board to allow them to get permission to put that station on there and allow their personnel to go on to it.
Well, that's what I was just going to wonder out loud among everyone is if USGS is who controls that, do they decide where it goes and then they speak with the railroad? What can we do today to help that process?
There was a USGS monitoring station on that trestle at one point throughout history. That's where the data from the 1969 report on Glacier Creek came from. So
That
what
would
happened
be
to it, I don't know.
That'd be on the railroad property.
Correct. I think that the railroad would be supportive of this. Particularly, I am trying to get Old Girdwood us declared a historic community district for representation for things like this, and that will hopefully also allow us to get some more funding, right? So we can protect our little community down there. And then obviously the railroad would be able to piggyback off that. As soon as I started, I was like, the trestles, as long as the trestle there, it's always going to cause problems. And he's like, we're going to talk soon, because he definitely got nervous. He knew where I was going with this conversation.
If you do get that meeting with, I like to be there for that meeting with the levy specialist, but it'd be nice to have railroad there too.
Absolutely.
And that way, at least if we're in the field, we can talk about getting me that USGS out there, and then we just go down that route of chasing them to see if they will do it for us.
Yeah, I think we have so many big players, interested parties, that I think that there's no reason that we can't get this issue solved without it being Girdwood's problem. Yep. There's some high stakes at risk here, and a lot of people, utilities for the entire Kenai Peninsula. I think the funding and the pockets are there for it.
So that's where I was going to go. I think it's important to advocate for, I think to start with, we need better data. So I agree with advocating for another monitoring station. I think we should push the capital funding for an updated drainage study. But what I don't think we should do is voluntarily take on the responsibility for maintaining infrastructure we have no information about, and potentially is a huge burden on taxing authority, especially when there are other parties that are probably more involved and have been more involved in the past.
Well, I think there's also a big argument that between the railroad and DOT, it's to their advantage to keep this levee straight and strong. Because if there's a meander, it will undermine the Seward Highway. And if the water is moving through there at the way they designed it here to be, a straight path between the two, then that protects this bridge here.
Yes.
So the water will just move right through and then shoot out. That's the goal.
And it actually goes, as Matt said, it goes beyond that, because one of the weaknesses, if you look at Girdwood from as a point of view, one of the weaknesses, all of our infrastructure is in that same location. That's where our electric infrastructure is. That's where our gas is. That's where our most of our communications are. So there's probably other parties also that have at least a passing interest in the safety of that area. So it's probably even broader, although I think DOT and the railroad are the one and two.
The funding is going to come from the feds.
Yeah.
In the end, and it's mostly going to come through a STIP program. And so getting it into, and it's great that you got the levy person involved, because getting the DOT involved is going to seek the funding through their petitioning or lobbying of DC. So
that would be for transportation, STIP.
Correct.
Ticket.
Yep. And, in this case, there's two arguments for the Alaska Railroad and for the Seward Highway that this levee is maintained and just monitored for protection. As I told Amanda, I said, if we start to have a problem, the service area is going to be the first ones to respond.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be, ultimately we're doing it as emergency response. But in the long run, it's got to be somebody else's bird to maintain.
And at the other level, you identified California Creek. We've obviously focused on this one. But the the one around California Creek, again, there doesn't seem to be much history. How do we make sure we don't forget that?
Well, that's once again is another complex issue. It's not directly tied to our road system, except maybe when it gets close to Town Square up here. But once again, you have property owners from the state, from the school district, and then HLB running through that. There's a better map here in this one here. So we would. I honestly, I need to have discussion with the ASD, because we do see some erosion happening in here, but it's on ASD land. So technically, under the service area, I can't spend money back in here on a preventive maintenance procedure because it's not directly tied to the road right away. And so we would have to have a discussion there, especially with the board, to, the capital savings that we're saving is dedicated for the road right away and drainage issues associated with the road right away. So we would have to have a discussion about if we were going to put money in there. It's not really to the interest of the school district to do it, but you would have to lobby the school district to come up with money to go in there and fix that. You don't have to answer for that.
Yeah, because again, and ultimately, it's not protecting their
not protect. They're the ones who ended up with the land and the distribution of land when it came from the state. So.
Okay, I think, Guy, did you have something for that? Okay. And this is an incredible amount of work and information, and I don't know if we need to do any action, but it sounds like if your meeting happens and Kyle's there and the right people are there, that's where it can directly go instead of just writing something about that next step. But
well, I think what we would do is we would have that meeting and we find out what's going on. Then we probably come back and ask for a resolution of support or recommendation from the board to say state get involved and USGS put a monitoring station in. I think that's what we would find out through those meetings. So I recommend that we keep this on the agenda, and then as we get more information, and the short-term goal is to come up with a direction that we can give to the board to hopefully write a recommendation of some sort to the next step.
any other comments?
Yeah, I would still, though we've kind of talked around it a little bit. I think we should still prioritize the specifically asking for for funding for an updated drainage study across the municipality. I think across the developed parts of the valley. So how it impacts our infrastructure in general, not just roads. How it impacts parks perhaps as well, given that we're having issues in Forest Fair Park, and to include at least the impact on the lower part of the valley and all good. So there is I know we haven't been that successful at sort of seeking. We've had mixed success at seeking capital funding. I'm not sure the best way of doing that. Most community councils are going through that process now.
Of seeking, who are we asking the capital?
I think we should be advocating through the municipality and having the municipality have it as a priority.
Through their flood hazard program or water management program?
Directly. I mean, they both, if something gets into the capital improvement program, then it ends up getting allocated perhaps to federal funding, perhaps to other grant funding, perhaps to state money, perhaps municipal money. But I think the important thing is that it gets onto that list and it gets high enough on that list that people are paying attention to it. So that is, we can also seek money ourselves or spend our own money.
Correct.
If it's one of the specific areas of our responsibility, but I'm saying we should actually be advocating at least the municipal and probably state level for capital expenditure to update the drainage information.
So that would probably be for 2024, 25.
Yeah.
State, because really when it comes down to the city is they either bond or they ask the state for capital dollars.
Yeah, or feds. Yeah,
and feds, but usually the feds go through the state, and so but for us we have 4 options. We can go through those 3 options, which have never really been successful for us, except at the state level, and thanks to Senator Giesel, who's been really listening to us for many years. But we don't do all bonding. We do the best by saving our money slowly and then tackling projects and cutting them off as we gain the funds, like we're doing right now in Alaska Creek. So
And from intergovernmental loans as well.
yeah, and we chase grants all the time, but those are time consuming and never successful. Well, I shouldn't say, but anything we chase with DOT improvements, we always end up losing to DOT when they encourage us to apply. So
if we can expand it beyond the impact directly on roads and have it beyond just the roads and drainage, then I think that gives us an alternative to having to pay for ourselves.
correct. And back to Amanda's point there, with the future development of Bolton Hills and Alyeska, I think that is pertinent for the city to look at a comprehensive road and drainage study for the service area.
Amanda?
And on that thought, because I completely agree with you that drainage study is just crucial for what's going on upstream, downstream, right? So I did go to the municipality because I went through the entire Anchorage comprehensive plan, what plans were out there and, that could help us. And frankly, it was the coastal program, which obviously was defunded. The only other thing that was left that I feel that could really help us would be that watershed program that we had. And so, but I went to the watershed program and they admitted that they had no data on it other than that US. Yeah, so like Mike was saying, I think that's a great place to start. That's where I went.
Yeah, there's been one individual that we've leaned on for years, and his name is Bill Spencer, and he's a hydrologist, engineer, and he has a great understanding of the valley. And he's the one who did the roads drainage study, study for us in the 2000s, and he's helped us. He was like the first guy I brought on site when Ruan blew out. And we came up with the plan and basically scratched it right there so we could do an emergency repair. But he's done the Alyeska view or the Alyeska Creek drainage design and things like that. So and I wanted to get him involved. He's basically keeps telling us he's going to retire. He goes away for 6 months and then comes back for 6 months. But we've been trying to get him involved to give us a proposal. So he'd be a guy I would pull back in because he knows all the old hydrologists. He knows all the history. He knows the problem areas that we've had and things along those lines.
Book him 6 months ahead.
Well, hopefully he might be cutting down to 3 months of working and then 9 months off.
Yes. Well, anything else?
I don't think there's any specific action now, but I think if you have that meeting, I think that'd be really helpful to give us the best direction.
We'll be seeing this item again.
Yep. Let me know how I can help with that too.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll go to number 18, Parks and Recreation request not to exceed for the painting and resealing.
We are going to put this on hold. We need for the courts to melt out because they want to see it because there is some earthquake crack in there that needs to be dealt with. So as soon as that melt, or as soon as we can actually blow off those courts, we're going to get in there and have them work.
Kevin's unmuted. Okay, so we'll see that one again, number 18. And then next we have new business to jump to next. Is there anything on 19, Margaret, to cover?
No, I think technically the new business should be item 19 and that'll bump the reports to 20, but that's just the list of reports that could be included in the packet. It's kind of a reminder to folks to provide a report or request some reports.
Okay, that's a note. Submit reports. Save time in meetings.
So item number 19 then was the one that Jennifer requested to be added. I think I saw her come back online.
Yes, so Jennifer, when you're ready, if you want to unmute and discuss the parliamentary training item.
Yeah, so can I check how the audio is? Is it too bothersome because I'm driving?
Nope, it's great.
Okay, so what I can't do is read the email, but I sent it to both Margaret and Kyle. That is the email that I'm working with on a parliamentary training that kind of builds on and refines what happened with 4-Acre. So with the 4-Acre group, that turned into kind of a general board training that was super interesting to me in the numbers that it drew from Anchorage. We had people like from Bishop's Attic and others. I didn't realize that there were many people who wanted 4-Acre training who couldn't afford it within their organization. And the thing that we did with GBOS is unlike anything 4-Acre had done before, and so provided an option for a variety of organizations, including almost every nonprofit I could think of in Girdwood. But I think I counted, we had over 16 different nonprofit representatives from different nonprofits show up to get the training. However, I think it's been recommended that every so often just standard parliamentary procedure training is good, and it's something we've already talked about. I think I kind of found 4-Acre when I was looking for a more strict parliamentary thing, and through 4-Acre found the Municipal League. And they're super interested when I explained that 4-Acre essentially designed something just for us. They're interested in doing the same thing. What they normally do is a 2-day training for people that are new to government. And so that people are flying in from all over Alaska into Anchorage or other locations to take seminars and, you know, basically government 101. But I explained that that's not quite what we're looking for in Girdwood. Between all the boards, I said, I'm not sure how many people we have that are still at the 101 level. But I think what we can start with, and also we don't necessarily need the connection with certain other organizations. So this is there is a list, and it looks like it's up. And what I was interested in, I know this is just new business right now, and I know we have Brian coming on, we assume. So I just wanted to throw this out there so that I could hear from the other members of the board if there were specific areas under these topics, because they are trying to condense 2 days of training into 2 hours of training. And then once we shape what people would be most interested in, then we can also discuss whether we're interested in spending more money on this or doing another training. But I wanted to design it for what we as a board would be interested in, not just what I thought was intriguing. So that's what I have to say about that.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Kyle, could you read the meeting, the list right there?
Sure. So it says here, here's a menu of topics that are covered in MLA, so Alaska Municipal League's newly elected training when it comes to meetings that I believe fits your needs. So meetings, type of meetings, Open Meeting Act, quorum, agenda, decorum and debate, parliamentary procedures, voting, and tips for a successful meeting.
Oh.
So this is what they do in that aspect. And so the recommended budget would be $500 for the time.
Okay. And what Jennifer just asked, are there any ideas from this right now, from anyone here right now, or online for topics?
Probably. I mean, there's, I think there's another just slightly outside of beyond or next to parliamentarian training is the issue of, you know, we're trying to often craft within all the rules and regulations of both the municipality and what we as a community want. We're trying to craft this kind of structure here, which is unique. And there are probably better ways of doing it. It'd be good to get some expertise involved. Maybe having, you know, ideally, I guess there would be people within the municipality who could do that. But in practice, they're all extremely busy doing many, many other things, or they no longer are there. So trying to get time from the municipality itself has been extremely difficult. I'm wondering if we should actually get someone with the right level of experience to come in as a consultant and help us, either in parliamentary training per se, or just in our committee structure as we go through and restructure things, or potentially restructure things. I think it would be helpful to get an external point of view, but someone with a lot of skills in that area.
And do you think that would be the municipal league?
Possibly, yeah. So I'm thinking it might be a little bit broader than just within meetings itself, but looking at the structure. And it'll need to be consistent with have to do in terms of code. But so that ideally it would be someone from within the municipality. I just don't think there's staff to do that.
Well, I don't know if she would have any more time, but the Jamie Hines, the municipal clerk now.
Yeah.
She's the one who was our parliamentarian through the trails plan process. And a wealth of knowledge, and she did a great job helping us to the point she got us kind of set up, and she just sat in the background and didn't do anything towards the end. But now she's municipal clerk. But she was very good about helping us get some time. And so, I do think between these two entities, you could probably find somebody that can do a pretty good parliamentary training with you.
I'm happy to reach out unless you'd like to do so. I'm happy to reach out to Jamie and see if she has any suggestions.
Feel free to go. Right now, they're probably just consumed with elections.
It'll be elections.
Yeah.
But that finishes next week. So.
Yep. After the runoff.
Yes, then there's a runoff.
Like, someone else is ready to speak or no?
Well, I don't know, Jennifer, have you talked to, have you looked at UAA? Do they have parliamentary training there?
Yeah, so I actually started with UAA way back when, like, this is now over a year ago. And I kind of ended up getting, there were options, but they were not options that I could spend a budget on, if that makes sense. We didn't have a bona fide. Yeah. Anyway.
That's fine. No, I got you. Yeah, I figured if you'd look there, I didn't know, but I trust you out here. If that was a dead end, I totally get it,
I would just add that from this list, now that we can see that the email was just as suggestions, it'd be easy to rule out the items that were covered already from the FOICR recently, or the ones we had in the recent years on OMA. So we're more interested in the parliamentary training and maybe the structure of our unique situation. But
thank you. I'm sorry, I can't raise.
That's okay. And you're starting to cut out just a little bit.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, thank you for confirming that, Brianna, because it's what I thought as well. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on this one? We'll look forward to hearing more next meeting, or if you have ideas, send them to Margaret through to Jennifer. Okay. I don't know if someone wanted to propose a number 21, or we can make a motion to adjourn.
Actually, I have one quick comment on one of the items under pending. So I think one of the items under pending is the LEC 2310-05. That's actually something which is coming in front of the planning and zoning. It's in the table. It's coming in front of planning and zoning on May the 20th.
Okay.
So the architects were seeking a letter of non-objection. It's currently out for agency comments.
We have one meeting.
Well, we don't have a regular meeting.
We don't have a regular meeting before that.
This is our last regular meeting before the planning and zoning meeting.
We haven't heard from the petitioners. Have you heard from the petitioners?
I believe that I did have an email from Marco, and he said that a letter from GBOS would be nice, but it's not required, and so he was not going to come back. That's what I took from that email.
But we, or at least the service area, is one of the agencies that's one of the municipal and state agencies that's invited to respond.
Yeah, so if you want to make comment, but we haven't heard from the petitioner seeking comment.
That's different.
So if you do want to make comment, we probably have to set a special meeting to do it.
We can throw it into all the other things on the 30th.
Right.
I just wanted to raise that as a question.
I do not have an answer right now.
I don't remember when they presented on that. Did you ask for one then, or what?
No, because they do the initial and then we wait for the packet to come out and then they usually return to seek something.
But the packet is out.
Well, I would say if he really wanted one, probably done this before, he probably for us.
Historically, that's been the case. I can't speak for him.
Yeah, just.
Hearing silence, I think there's no motion to act on this. But thank you for bringing it to the attention, Mike.
To adjourn.
Oh, hold on.
I did have one question, Shivani, regarding the April 23rd assembly meeting for the fire department and emergency
Yes, yeah,
responder
that's right.
tax exemption.
Yes.
If we could just say that I could speak if I'm able, or if someone else is interested, they can speak on behalf of GBOS. I am not having the
I'm going to suggest the fire department.
burden of desire to do that.
Which would be good. Good pun, by the way.
Yeah.
But
I would be happy to speak on that.
because we've already passed the motion, so I've already passed a resolution, so it's really reflected that resolution.
And when the BOD has their meeting, they hopefully will bring it up too, to have more testimony or just letter writing their representatives.
Well,
think
it
it has-
is next Tuesday, so if they don't have a meeting before next Tuesday.
Right. Good
So do
reminder.
you want to, I can just move for the Brianna as fire department supervisor should represent GVOS at that public hearing next week.
We have a motion on the floor. That formally.
You gotta make a motion for you to go.
Well, we're just formally saying.
Oh, that she will.
That Brianna Carey should represent.
I can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Sorry,
Oh,
because
I'd like to make a motion that Brianna Sullivan represent the Girdwood Board of Supervisors in support of the property tax exemption for our
Got it.
dairy.
I'll second.
Second.
We said the same thing, but I'm going to second it.
Oh, you, okay, I didn't know
That's fine.
if you wanted a motion to.
It's very loud.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments? So we'll go by assent on that. I will be speaking on that item on the 23rd. Thank you very much. Now I'd entertain a motion to adjourn unless.
Move to adjourn.
Oh,
Good night, everybody.
that's okay.
Thank you.
Good night.